No.
Okay, it's recording. There we go. Okay, so here we've got this little boat there, and let's start the river moving. And we can go upstream. Let it go upstream. Slow down. There you go. Okay. Yeah, so move the river. There you go. So now we're moving against the current. We can also move with the current. That's more fun. Right? Always when we move, though, it's always the velocity of the boat plus the velocity of the water, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so if the water is... Here. Okay, here, I'm good at this.
That's not
He didn't read it.
Murray's a rowing master.
Okay, so
Knows how to row his thing.
if it's heading this way, right? This thing is going to go like on YouTube. If it's heading upstream like this, right? The current is going downstream, and that cancels out part of the velocity. So that's kind of a tough thing, right? If you have to paddle against the current, it's always difficult to do that because the current is taking away some of your velocity. We always want to be heading this way, right, with the current. That's fun because even if we don't paddle, the current carries us downstream, which is presumably the way we're traveling. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the interesting thing happens is when I send this thing across. Okay, I'm going to send it across to Alex, and he's going to catch it. And he's going to send it straight there. But because the river is moving to the side, okay, it's actually not going to go straight across. It's going to move in a combination. It's still going to be the velocity of the boat plus the velocity of the water. Now it's going to move kind of like this. It's weird. Okay, so watch this. Start the river motion.
playing Frogger.
There you go. All right, so, and I hope you guys appreciate this. Originally, I wanted them to put an artificial river in my new room, okay? But they, they just all the red tape and they didn't have $3.4 million.
But
I mean, like really, right? And all the the liability insurance and stuff like that, right? So what I did was I came up with this.
Drown
Notice
in
I
a foot
did
of
use
water.
blue paper, right? Notice that there are waves there, so if you kind of blur your eyes a little bit, it kind of looks like it is water. Okay. Now in that one, we've talked about velocity with components before, haven't we? Like it's moving across and it's moving this way at the same time. This is that's how it happens, right? This is one way to make it happen is that it is moving this way because of the cart rolling. It's moving this way because it's being pulled that way by Max, right? Yeah?
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Right? So that is, we've got clear components. Whatever the speed this is going is the component that way. Whatever speed he's moving is the component that way, right? Okay, so obviously if we want to go straight across, what do we have to do? We don't point straight across. We have to point at some angle like this,
Yep.
right, to prevent ourselves from being washed downstream. Now, I'm so crazy smart, right? I can look at that water moving, and I can be like, I can put it at exactly the right angle, such that it goes straight across to Alex. Okay, and in this short time, Alex has figured out how it is that he can put it on there so that it goes straight across to me. Okay, the first time, without it even going upstream or downstream. Okay, and I'll even hold my hands like this to show you how straight across it is. Okay, start the motion of the river. That was a warm-up there. That was a warm-up. I actually rounded some of the numbers in my mind, and that's why it actually drifted upstream. So, all right. Start the river motion. Forward, forward. Faster. Oh, look at that. That's perfect. Look at that. Oh, that's great. Okay, obviously it's all Max. Max is rigging the whole thing so that it looks like I'm smart. And that Alex is smart. Alex is actually that smart, but I'm not. Okay, so both Alexes. Okay, so the next time you are at the beach and you go to Nehalem Bay State Park or anywhere on the beach and you see a light airplane flying, not like a 747 that goes, hundreds of miles an hour, right? But like a Piper Cub that goes, 90 miles an hour, something like that, right? Top speed 90, 120 and the windshield caves in. I don't even know, right? But it's like they go slow, but even 90 miles an hour is pretty darn fast. right? Okay, so when you watch those things at the beach, they're trying to fly up and down the beach, straight up and down the beach, yes? Okay, if there's an onshore wind, what do they have to do to fly straight up and down the beach? They have to angle into the wind. Now, when you watch those airplanes flying, you'll see them and they look like they're going like this. Have you ever seen an airplane look like that? Or birds sometimes will look like they're flying like that, right? They're doing that. They're actually doing that maneuver to keep themselves from drifting downstream. They're steering themselves into the current like that to prevent themselves from going downstream. To be sure, the airplane is flying through the air. It is flying. Here's what's really happening. Don't move the river at all. Yes? It really is moving. The airplane's really moving through the air this way, right? It's just that the motion of the air makes it look like it's not going straight. Okay? Because airplanes have to fly straight through the air. If you actually try to make it yaw to the side like that, it becomes aerodynamically unstable and bad things happen to the flight surfaces. I don't know exactly what happens, right? But if you crank on the rudder and make it yaw around like that without tilting the wings, right, it actually is a bad thing to do. Okay. Now, if you are, how many people, does anybody here know how to do like whitewater canoeing or kayaking? There's rafting, right? Rafting is subtly different, but I think you can do some of these things in rafting, right? This maneuver that we call, if the current is flowing that way, with a canoe, let's say there's like a waterfall or a rock or something that we don't want to hit right here, or a shallow stretch. What we do, this is called an upstream ferry. We turn the canoe around, paddle upstream, go across the current, turn the canoe down, go downstream, right? That's a maneuver that people do. Generally, you don't do that in any dangerous situation because if this is like rocks and stuff and you turn your canoe sideways, there's always the chance that you'll run into the rocks sideways, which is the worst way, right? Okay. So what real good canoers do is they actually come down here. As soon as they see this, the bow person goes, look out, or I don't know what they do, right? Okay. And they actually start paddling backwards. Okay. So they're paddling their canoe backwards, then they point the canoe like this, go across, and then go downstream. Okay. Now that is a really tricky thing. Okay, upstream ferries, by the way, are fun if you turn your canoe around and you have a nice big standing wave here. It's actually fun to get your canoe on the upstream side of that, and you can just sit there. Or even more fun, you can kind of put your paddle in and shoot across. This is called surfing, right? Okay, it's much easier than I believe surfing on a surfboard in actual surf. Okay, because I can do it, right? And I cannot, for the life of me, stand on top of a surfboard in actual waves, right? Now. The other maneuver is called a downstream ferry. This is what actual whitewater canoers do, is they come down. It requires teamwork because when you actually are paddling backwards, when you paddle forward, the stern steers. The person in the back steers. When you paddle backwards, who's the stern now? The bow, the one in the front, right, is actually the one in the back now, right? You're paddling backwards, right? And when you paddle forward, there's a stroke called a C stroke, or a stroke called a J stroke. When you paddle backwards, you do the same thing, right? There's a C stroke, and then there's also a J stroke. Yeah? C stroke, J stroke. They do counterintuitive things because the canoe pivots around the middle, right? So you're already paddling backwards. You're already using reverse strokes. The canoe is already doing the seesaw thing, right? So like if you push your nose that way, the back of the canoe goes the other way, kind of a thing, right? Okay? And so it takes so long to figure that out, right? Once you get it, it's like driving down the freeway at night. You can paddle backwards a lot, right? But and you can paddle between like buoys and cones and stuff like that, right? You know, okay. But it takes a lot of learning to do, and oftentimes people just like crash their canoe or something like that. But you practice out on flat water before you try to do it in whitewater, and then you work as a team. And properly motivated, you could actually paddle really, really fast backwards. In fact, I think I have this impression that I was paddling with a guy named Ned Patterson, who's just like this incredibly good paddler, and I think we punched into a hole, like we were about to go into a hole. You know what a hole is? It's a little waterfall, and then the water circulates back on itself. If you get trapped in there, you can't swim out. Like there's logs that have been sitting in holes for like 10 years. I don't know, not really, but you know. Like they'll sit there though all low water season, and then the spring floods wash them out because you can't swim out. The water's going into it from all sides. The only way to get out is to dive down and get spat out the bottom, right? We punched into one of these holes, and I have the impression that we were actually hanging over the edge. I don't think so. But I yelled something like, let's paddle backwards really fast, right? Or he figured it out, and he pulled us out of that hole, paddling backwards, single-handedly. Right? All right, we won't go over the little waterfall. All right, let's go back to the ranch, and I'll show you how to solve these problems. Yeah.